And this is my backup. All right, and so I'll just start while it's already shooting. 2 movies, 2 Oscars. That's pretty insane. What does that do to expectations? You know, when both on set and for, you know, audience.
Well, I mean, the 2 Oscars get you a lot of phone calls returned, and gets you a lot of meetings that you might not get otherwise. So I think that's the most I benefited from it, was that anybody that I wanted to meet with would meet with me, and I don't my suggestions wouldn't get shot down so quickly. But that's about it. I mean, everybody gets that, you know. You can win Oscars for certain categories. It doesn't mean that suddenly you're a master in others. You know?
Yeah. Okay.
And we all agreed that I was unproven in this area, but that was part of the thrill for me, was to. I mean, I'd never written a script before Toy Story. I'd never directed before I did Nemo. It's like, they're all these first, and people are quick to forget that, you know.
Right. And now before release, there was all this talk about the budget, and this thing's a runaway train.
It wasn't.
I know it was. That's what Jim was saying. But was that frustrating to sort of?
Well, it's always frustrating to hear lies.
Yeah.
Put out there, and it's always frustrating to see how people are so gullible.
Mm-hmm. I
mean, by now, people should learn that if you read it in print, it doesn't mean it's true.
Yes.
And if you read it in print on the internet, it's really not true.
Yes.
And if you do, then you know it's a little more of a mirror to how gullible you are.
Right.
You know?
Well, did you? I mean, was that something? Because you're in the middle of production, all this is happening. What was your reaction to like this?
No, I wasn't in the middle of production, was I? This kind of came out in the fall. I was like finishing up.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. It's easy to ignore when it's not true.
Okay. All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It really is.
All right. The movie has its own mythology and nomenclature, and to some people, they might think that was confusing. Was there ever sort of a drive to sort of expand on that? I know you do frame it in a way that makes it more accessible, but like, you know, like a crawl or something. I mean,
we talked about it, but I wanted to avoid it if I could, because there's nothing better than just learning as you go. Mm-hmm. So I think we found a way that we could, you know, we trimmed it down to just that Willem intro, mm-hmm. to just give you the basics. Like, I didn't care if you remembered names. You just need to know that people live here. These guys, they hate these guys. Something new happened. And I took it from a 6-year-old sort of perception of just like, that's all I need to know. I'll see these guys again. I'll learn it as I go. I trust the audience. You know, it's just keeping the audience wanting. It's knowing when the audience is not caring to know and is tired of holding information versus when they're actually ready to hear new information. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the learning curve of storytelling, is finding that stuff out.
Okay. And you've been living with this for so long. I mean, production and then your secondary production, or whatever you used to call it. When do you decide, I know, and you've been writing the second one sort of, you know, on your own. When do you decide if you're going to continue with this and what sort of role you...
Well, I had to make a decision before I even started this one that would we even conceptually want to do a trilogy if the opportunity came, because it really changed how we were going to tell this story. And I thought that was smart because... Again, it was more from a fan standpoint. I just wanted somebody to start the series going. Yeah. So for the rest of my life, I could be going to the next Bond film, right? Mm-hmm. And whether it changed directors' hands or anything, that wasn't my agenda. Was just like, could I start the engine going and then let it go? Mm-hmm. And then the next decision kind of had to come somewhere over the course of this last year of like, do I want to do this again, or would I want somebody else to pick up the role? Mm-hmm. And you know, I think. I just fell so in love with the cast and the crew, and how the results were coming together the way I wanted it to, that I started investing in writing the second one more seriously. Economics will be the reason that it goes forward or doesn't go forward. Yeah. It'll be the biggest reason. And so we've been very practical from day one for like our first conversation 6 years ago in 2006. Yeah. Of like, we'll just see how this goes, and if it goes well, then we'll be primed and ready to go to the next one. And if not, I got plenty of other ideas.
Sure. Yeah. And I was actually Taylor said he would not do it unless you directed.
Well, he's a sweetheart, and I would like to say the same. You know.
Right. Now, the influence of John Carter is undeniable, but you know, frankly, not a lot of people know about it because it came out way before everything else.
Yeah, and I never expected anybody to know anything about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's very obvious to me. Like, nobody knows what that property is. It's just. it's few and far between you could find people. And I think with each generation, it's like the older somebody gets, the more likely they may know about the property.
Mm-hmm.
The younger they get, they're not. So you could just tell it's diminishing, you know.
Yeah.
So I had to write this in a way that, thankfully, the same guys that did the comic books in the Marvel series in the 70s, they did for me.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't assume I knew it, so they introduced me to it with the cartoons. And I'm trying to do the same thing with a movie. I don't expect you to know about it ahead of time.
Okay.
This is not like this novel finally come to screen for all you fans. I don't know if there are any fans out there, but this novel has finally come to the screen. You know.
A lot of all the new Pixar movies a lot of them are first-time feature films that are coming out that we know about at least.
Yeah.
So what is the competition sort of like there to get your project going? Like, so, you know, knock on wood, you make this next. But
Yeah.
if you went back to Pixar to make a movie, you know, there's a whole another batch of guys that you
Yeah.
sort of shepherded. What is
I don't know. I mean, we've been making it up as we go along at Pixar. We're constantly growing, constantly changing. And so there isn't this big plan, and it's not competitive at all.
Okay.
If anything, we've always been a little understaffed. And for as big as we are, all I've ever known is we're very cautious about who we bring in and how we work so that we're always a little overtaxed. There's always like more mouths to feed than there is food. So I think the smartest thing that we did, whether we meant to, was that Brad stepped out for a while and I did too, because it created a vacuum that had to be filled, and it forced some guys to come up that maybe wouldn't have had a chance otherwise. And the same thing happened to me and Pete and Lee.
Mm-hmm.
They had to create more. We weren't asking or vying to be direct. There suddenly was a vacuum where there was this demand made after Toy Story to make more movies, and we had to step in and fill the vacuum. And I think it's a very natural thing that's happened, and I think it's a good thing. It'd be a nice problem if we were fighting over who gets to go next.
That's true. And you mentioned in an interview that you did with Harry Inicool that you had working on something with Pete Docter.
Yeah.
How far along is that? I know you guys.
It's very nascent.
Yeah.
Very nascent.
Okay.
We're just at the beginnings of it, but it's been an idea we've wanted to do for almost 20 years now. It's
wow,
kind of
really?
scary. We got caught up in the whole empire building of Pixar.
Yeah. A movie like this big, $200 million epic, usually a summer movie, but you're coming out in March, and it's always been that.
Yeah.
Was that something that you were behind, or what do you think?
No, it was a conscious effort. Conscious decision. We just saw how many known properties are coming out in summer. Yeah. And we're this original thing that we're asking you to take a chance on. And we just thought, we'll never get heard above the noise when summer comes around.
Sure.
So this is a better shot.
Okay. And it seems like, you and Taylor have a very, very friendly, great working relationship. Yeah. Talk about how that sort of developed. He said, he first met at some meeting and automatically the trust was there. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. He's older than my son, but not so much that I didn't kind of have like a big, I guess an older big brother kind of attachment that I got with him right away. Mm-hmm. He just, I don't know, I think I was coming around to confidence in what I knew I needed to do to make properties work, coming off of Wall-E. Wall-E was sort of my second round. Mm-hmm. And I had a much better sense of who I was and what I need to do and how I need to work. And I think some of that confidence was there at the time that we met, because it was right at the height of the release of Wall-E. Mm-hmm. And I think he was very cautious about. He was getting a lot of courting. He always gets a lot of courting. Always gets a lot of, hey, we want you on this, we want you on that. And he gets it from the sort of Hollywood side of it. And I think that, what he looks for, the oasis he looks for in this whole landscape is just real people with no BS. And that is definitely one of my, as you can tell when we interview stuff, that's just me. I mean, that's my way I work. I don't want to have to play games. I don't know how to play games. I'm not good at politics. I am who I am. And I think that was a breath of fresh air for him.
I guess the last thing, this project, I can't even imagine what it looked like from the get-go. What was the most daunting thing at the beginning, and now, looking back, what was the hardest thing to sort of overcome?
The most daunting thing was first day of the shoot. You're in this set that's about 3 times the size of this house, 360. So you're in it, and you've got this whole army of people, and it's time to call action. And you're just like, okay, here we go, and then it just got bigger. You know, it's like you'd suddenly get to Utah and there'd be an entire western town built for you, and everybody's waiting for you. And there's armies. You know, they build this whole set on the side of a mesa, and you're like, oh my God! You just couldn't think it. The scale of it was so huge of what people were doing for you. I often would find myself having to go, just pretend it's digital. Pretend it's digital. Pretend it's digital. Because, you know, I've built entire cities digital.
Sure.
You know? So I thought, all right, just pretend it's digital. And don't be afraid of it.
And looking back, what was the thing that was sort of ended up being the hardest thing that you didn't think was going to be?
Just the sheer stamina.
Mm-hmm.
The sheer physical stamina of standing on your feet for 110 days. And having to never waver. Always having to be the first guy on set and the last guy off, if you could be. And never letting the fear show. I mean, you're literally a captain of a ship.
Yeah.
You know. Okay. But you know, the Pixar method that I've learned is that, you know, don't be afraid to show you don't know what you're doing. And so I definitely was more like, I was very in other words, I guess the smart thing is to always be confident in what you do, what you know, and in what you don't know. And that's what people want. Like, people are not dumb. If they think it's not going well and they can tell it's not going well, then you should be the first guy to say it's not going well. Mm-hmm. As opposed to trying to hide it. You know what I mean? Sure. That's all they really look for, is somebody that's like, oh, he's got a clue, and he's going to do something about it.
Cool. Well, you definitely have that. Thank you so much.
Thanks.